going on, guys? My name is Wade with Tech Daily. So here we are again, back with another Samsung flagship smartphone. This is, of course, the S9 Plus. It technically was released today, though you probably wouldn't have noticed, since this time around, it's definitely been a quieter than usual launch for Samsung, I think. Given that, and I don't think this is any secret, the S9 is a fairly incremental upgrade from last year's phones. That's certainly not a bad thing, though. The S8 and S8 Plus were fantastic devices, and there wasn't a lot that needed to be done with them in my opinion, but Samsung did make some small changes and upgrades to this smartphone, which I'll of course go over in this video. So without further ado, let's go ahead and unbox this thing and see what it has to offer. For the last couple of smartphone cycles now, Samsung has remained pretty consistent with the packaging and unboxing experience. When you flip open the lid, you get a packet of material, which first houses a fancy little SIM ejector tool, and there's also the usual bunch of paperwork and guides and things, and underneath all of that junk, we of course get the phone itself. This one is that coral blue color, which is very shiny and very hard to film, but I think looks fantastic. I'm also getting the new lilac purple color for the regular S9, so if you're holding out to see that color in action, I've got you covered. As far as what else comes inside the box, you'll find the usual parts and pieces, including the Samsung Adaptive Fast Charging Power Brick. It's the same one we've had for a while now. You also get a USB OTG connector, which, just as a side note, it's one of the most handy little adapters you could ask for. Yes, it's primarily used to transfer data from one phone to another, but it has a million other practical uses, and I'll link a video on screen where you can learn more about that. There's also a pair of AKG tuned earbuds, which are the same ones from last year, I believe, along with some extra rubber ear tips. And finally, the USB cable you use for charging up the phone. With all that out of the way, here is the new S9 Plus in all of its coral blue glory. As far as the size and shape and form factor, it's essentially identical to the S8 Plus from last year, and for me, that's totally okay. I think Samsung designs some really impressive smartphones with the curves and the glass, and of course, no awful notch. So sticking to something like this is completely acceptable in my book, because it's still one of the best looking smartphones out there. You will notice one slight change to the rear of the phone though. The fingerprint sensor is still there, but was moved. Instead of being placed awkwardly next to the cameras, it's now below them. And I think this was definitely a good change. Not that the S8's fingerprint sensor was terrible, but it just makes more sense in this spot, especially on the bigger S9 Plus. It's more comfortable, and yes, I know most people will be using the other ways to unlock the device, like intelligent scan with the iris scanner and facial recognition, but still, props to Samsung for listening to our complaints. Beyond that one physical change though, everything else on the device pretty much remains the same. You've still got the same Infinity Edge screen, the same button placements, which unfortunately include a dedicated Bixby button still. I don't know why that's necessary, but there it is. We thankfully still have a headphone jack because Samsung doesn't want to punish us with dongles just yet, and we're still graced with expandable storage. So Samsung has kept everything we've asked for with this device once again. One welcome change to the S9 is a big improvement to the speakers. We now get dual stereo speakers with the earpiece coming into play, similar to how the iPhone does it. These are supposedly tuned by AKG with Dolby Atmos, and all the marketing jargon aside, they sound pretty good. Definitely a welcome change, and definitely something you'd notice right away. The S9 Plus once again rocks a beautiful 6.2-inch Super AMOLED display at a resolution of 2960 by 1440. It's the Infinity display, so it goes edge to edge with that subtle curve, and Samsung didn't really make any major changes to the display here. It's supposedly 15% brighter according to Samsung, but they didn't really need to do anything drastic once again. Samsung has some of the best displays on the market. DisplayMate declared the S9 displays as the most accurate in regards to color representation, giving Samsung an A+. And I can definitely believe that. You're not going to be disappointed with the viewing experience here at all. Now, probably the biggest upgrade specifically with the S9 Plus over last year's phone is the camera. The coolest new feature is definitely the variable aperture, which you can actually see changing on the lens, which is kind of trippy. You can alter between f1.5 and f2.4 in manual mode, and this should allow for better shooting in low light, along with a hardware-based shallow depth of field effect, and I'm really looking forward to putting this camera to the test. There's now also super slow-mo capabilities, 960 FPS, and with that, you're only getting a couple seconds at a time, and yes, technically the Sony Xperia XZ2 can do 960 FPS at 1080p, while the S9 Plus is stuck at 720p, but it's still a cool little add-on. What isn't all that nice though are Samsung's AR emojis. They're somewhere between a Snapchat filter and Apple's Animojis, but it's just bad. The create an avatar feature didn't even give me a beard. The mouth movements on like the animals don't line up when you're talking like they do with the iPhone. Nothing about this is good. Besides all that though, as far as specs and software and everything, it's a very familiar Samsung experience with the Samsung UI over Android 8.0. There's some Samsung apps and Bixby, but no carrier bloatware or anything like that, since this phone I got direct from Samsung unlocked. Here in the US, we get the Qualcomm Snapdragon 845 processor, Adreno 630 GPU, and specifically on the S9 Plus, we get 6GB of RAM and a 3500 mAh battery. Top of the line specs as you'd expect. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this quick first impressions video. I've got a lot more planned with this phone, including some camera comparisons and of course my full review. Let me know your thoughts on the new S9 in the comments below, and also be sure to follow Tech Daily on Twitter and subscribe to the Tech Daily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.